What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to go over 5 things I wish more players would do in Rematch. So I was considering a tips and tricks like video of sort, like an expert one, but I thought, I've played this game for dozens upon dozens of hours at this point, and I've just noticed some stuff, whether it's my own flaws and things that I've done, or, when you're just kind of examining the field and you say, man, why didn't that guy or girl, do this thing? I made a list of 5 things that I would just prefer that people would maybe do a little bit differently. So the first 2, I want to talk about goalkeeper related things, and then the other 3, I want to talk about just players, right? So let's start with the goalkeeper one. Number 1, I mentioned this in the goalkeeper tips and tricks video I did, which I did that like 2 days in, but to be honest with you, I think a lot of those tips still apply to this day, and I want to double down on it. So number 1, being too aggressive is something I wish kind of would stop. Now look, different people have different play styles, and even in that video, people have told me, hey, I actually jump up into the play, or I actually do play it more aggressively than you do. I have found my own sweet spot when playing goalkeeper, and I feel like I've made far more saves than I've let in goals. I've kept the game alive and all that kind of jazz. I deserve some medals or something. No, in all reality, I do play very conservatively. I play very back in my net, and I just feel like, being able to cut them off, that is something, but the game is sensitive, and sometimes it'll give it to you and sometimes it won't in terms of ball tracking. I just find playing it back is the safer way to do it. But when I talk about being too aggressive and what I kind of want goalkeepers to cut it out is sometimes they'll just abandon their post, right? I mean, you gotta pay attention. There's sometimes situations where the ball is just getting blocked nonstop, and there was a new patch in this game where when you block the ball, almost different physics kind of happen nowadays. So it does get a little crazy when you're taking shots or when there's ricocheting balls. You have to pay attention, and I just find that sometimes goalkeepers are so focused on one thing, or they're not a far away shot they don't take seriously enough, and then it ends up just going kind of right past them. Or I've seen situations where goalkeepers just completely run out of their net, and I mean, if there's a situation where somebody swaps in for them, that's cool, but if that doesn't happen, you can take a long shot and score when a goalkeeper is just not really paying attention. So again, I understand there's different styles, and I'm not necessarily talking about when a player is on a breakaway, right? Sometimes you do want to be aggressive to that. Sometimes you want to kind of hang back, but I'm talking about just other moments of kind of oh, well, I'll cheat a little bit and I'll just kind of go a little bit out further than I should. Oftentimes that comes back to bite you, especially in ranked mode, right, where everybody takes it very, very seriously. Okay, so number 2, I want to talk about giving the ball back and options. Again, kind of a pseudo tips and tricks. I'm almost just talking about tips and tricks, but what I oftentimes find with goalkeepers is you just look for that breakaway type pass. And look, sometimes that happens. Sometimes one of your forwards is playing it again, kind of a little cheating, right? And they're very far up. And hey, if you can get that ball to them immediately, you do that. And then they have a breakaway, and players are getting better and better, right? The odds of scoring there are pretty high. So I'm not saying, never do that, but I've gotten into situations where I've watched the goalkeeper just get, and even myself, I feel like I'm pretty good at getting the ball to my players and letting them do the rest of the work. But sometimes, I'll do it, or sometimes I'll see a goalkeeper get into a back and forth fight where they'll kick it to the opponent will kick it back. Have you ever seen that maybe? And it goes back, forth. That's just wasting time. That's not, I think, all that productive. So, and I guess you can also change this to what I want the players to start doing a little bit better, in my experience, is giving options. So there's literally a button you could press to say options, and sometimes people will do it. But what I oftentimes find is players are trying to go for that breakaway pass. Not even the goalkeeper, but the players put themselves into position where the goalkeeper has to shoot it into traffic, has to shoot it to the opposing team. I try to always give the goalkeeper options. Now, depending on what clips I'm showing, sometimes players are good at cutting you off. So I'll run in diagonals or straight lines across the field to try to get some distance from the opponent. So that way, if the goalkeeper tries to shoot it to me, hey, I have maybe 6 feet distance from the person who's chasing me. But another thing that I think people are doing more and more and more is they're letting one player, and sometimes I'll be that player, that's right next to the goalkeeper. right next to them. So as soon as they make a save, you got a couple people that are going super far out, right, for like long shot passes. But you also have one or two people that are very close to the goalkeeper where you can roll it or you can kick it to them and they can start the attack from like their own end. I feel like as the game has advanced and people have gotten better, you're seeing that more often. And by the way, that also helps if like you're in a jam. If you have two people on you and you don't have a good pass as a player, I've seen more and more people start to kick it to the goalkeeper to kind of almost get a second chance, right? Because the goalkeeper can shoot it and has a better kind of view of everything. So I've been seeing that kind of trick more and more often used, where you can use the goalkeeper like in the attack. You can almost retreat if you're feeling overwhelmed. But that's just something, like I said, you can get into a back and forth, or you can outright give the ball to the opposing team by accident, right? But if you have like one or two players that's kind of close to your side, nobody normally watches them, so you're able to start the attack there. The goalkeeper gives it to you, and then you're able to work your way downfield. Maybe you're the one that makes like the far out pass, right? But at least you're in possession of it, and at least you kind of can start from your own end. Okay, number 3, and now we move to just players, just solely players. I want to talk about offensive possession, okay? And this is a couple different things, so like what I would like for players to stop doing. And I do it too. Okay, sometimes you feel like you have a really good shot, like sometimes and again, the game is changing. The ball detection sometimes is a little wonky, and I'll try to take advantage. I've scored a couple goals kind of curling it in on like the short side of a goalkeeper because I think that they're cheating, right? They're kind of moving away from that side, so I'll kick it into the short side, and sometimes that'll work. So again, this is not a be-all, end-all, but I have seen a lot of people that are trying to be very selfish, and I just feel as players get better, and again, I pretty much only play ranked. Okay, I'm in Gold Division 2. I've put in most of my time just in ranked games. So all my victories, all my goals, a lot of those were scored in ranked mode. And so as players are getting better, defense is getting better, and we'll talk about that in a second. That's next up on the list. But you can't really do it by yourself anymore. There's still some super, super talented people, but most times, and even the people that were able to like just dribble through everybody, right? They do the volleys, they try to deke people out. Those days, I think, are becoming less and less and less, and more often than not, you're going to have to make some smart plays in order to score, right? So when it comes to offensive possession, I guess that's really what I'm talking about, is that selfishness. It just kind of needs to be eliminated sometimes. And I mean, I try to set up like almost a rectangle, right, with the 4 of you. Sometimes I'll have, whether it's myself or it kind of naturally happens, I think people understand like the team dynamic generally, there'll be a person that kind of plays back, like almost in the middle of the field, because that person's job is to just keep the ball in. You know what I mean? They're not there to, again, try to deke through 3 different people. They're there to, if the ball kind of pops out somewhere that your team can't get to, you as that 4th person maybe tries to get there. Maybe they're the one that pulls back and is the first defender, right, to be able to stop the opposing team. And I really do think that works quite often. I think what tends to break down in that moment, and again, I'm guilty of it as well, is just the selfishness, right? I'll make one extra move. I'll try to hold on to the ball 1 extra second. Well, oftentimes you'll have a person you can pass it to, right? And people aren't always going to hover around you, so somebody tends to break free. I mean, I've gotten a lot of goals and assists recently from those quick passes, almost a 2-on-1, or you just see somebody kind of breaking out from their person, and you're like, oh, if I can just thread the needle, get the ball to that person, it's an easy, one shot in. And that's how I feel like goals are being scored more and more often right now than what they used to be. So that offensive possession, I feel like, is really important. Obviously, it runs the clock down. So if you're up, 2-0 and you're in the offensive zone, to have somebody that is trying to get all fancy, there's a time and a place, right? And if you're able to just kind of possess that ball for 2.5 minutes just by causing chaos, well, they're not going to be able to score even 1 goal, let alone 2 to tie it. Okay, so number 4, I want to talk about playing your person or your zone. This is something, I have one specific thing I would like to tell people to knock it off, in terms of what I have seen at some points. Okay, so now we're talking about defense, right? We're playing in the defensive zone. So oftentimes you'll have the one person that plays back. In fact, I literally just said that offensively, right? There'll be the one person. And so because there's a person that plays back offensively, there tends to also be the other team that's playing in that same kind of end. Most times, and this is even just the last couple days that I've been playing, most times that my team has gotten scored on is when there's only 2 defenders. Now, yes, there'll be breakdowns. Sometimes there'll be a breakaway or a 2-on-1. I'm not really counting those. I'm talking when you're covering your person or when you're covering your zone, right? People, I think, tend to play zones more often nowadays than, again, even towards the beginning as well, where you're kind of just hovering. You're not necessarily on the person. You're kind of a couple feet away. You're waiting for them to mess up so you can do a quick little, circle tackle type thing, and then you can take the ball and go. So most times that I've gotten scored against is when it's only 2 people defending, not 3 or 4. And it's simply because of the zones. If they have 3 or 4 people offensively and they're pushing, again, I would say most teams have at least one person that cheats. One person that cheats. So again, in terms of like what I would like people to actually change about their play style, if you see one person cheating, don't be the second person that cheats. That's pretty much it, because again, like I think there is something to that zoning type defense method. I think it works really, really well, especially for me and the teams that I've played on. But I mean, you can only cover so much ground if it's 2 of you defending. You're really hoping for a bad pass, and you can kind of like step in between it, right? Cut off that angle or whatever. But if you have 2 people that are in the midfield, or they're even like waiting for a breakaway pass all the way downfield, well, the ball will most likely never get to them because you have 4 people controlling it in your own end. So that's something that I've noticed, and I mean, that's the one really big like stickler thing that's stuck out to me, is oftentimes when I've gotten scored the last couple days, there'll just be not just one, but there's 2 people not playing defense, and that you just can't have that, right? You can't have a 4-on-2. People are too good. They'll be able to find that quick pass, and they'll be able to score. And number 5 is passing. Now, we kind of covered it in some other parts to this video, but to double down on it and to go back to even the selfishness part of the offensive zone, look, passing, very important. You can obviously have like the pinpoint accurate passes, and you can talk about those a little, and that's kind of what I was talking about with the offensive part to it. Again, like I've gotten a lot of assists and even some goals in recent days just having that perfect pass. The issue with perfect passing is like you really got to nail it. I would say this, you have to also aim to where the person is going to be. And that's a fine art, because the line, it gets a little finicky, and it's pretty like pinpoint accurate with your analog stick, where you really got to aim it just right. And then there's always the possibility of the opponent stepping in that lane, right? And just blocking it. So to get that breakaway pass, or to get that perfect 2-on-1 where you have or even not even 2-on-1, but just a person breaking free from like the person covering them, right? And you make that pass across field, it goes through 2 different people and gets right to the guy or girl that you want it to get to, right? That's happened. That does happen to me. I feel like I'm getting better and better at that as the game has gone on. But overall, like you're probably gonna miss those at least half the time, if not more than half the time. You're gonna miss that. When I talk about passing, I guess I kind of mean like everywhere else. I was mentioning that offensively, where it's like if you have a person kind of in the corner, pass it to them every now and then. It's not like a egotistical, like I need the ball if I'm in the corner thing, but maybe that person can make a play. Maybe that person has a better angle or can shoot it at a different angle towards the goalkeeper where it bounces off the wall and somebody could get a rebound, right? Again, possession, just keeping the ball alive, being able to pass it. But I also mean, again, even like defensively, even when you're in different situations, I find there's still that selfishness of like, well, including for myself, let me make one more play, right? Let me try to just like dribble it from my right foot to my left, and maybe I can fake out the person and I can just get around them. I don't need to pass it. But I mean, oftentimes that doesn't work. And again, as people get better and better and they hover around you, right, you're not going to be able to get super, super fancy. The more aggressive the defense is, the easier it's able to do that. But if they're not all that jumpy, you're not really going to be able to deke them as well. And so really the only other thing you can do is pass, or to take like a long shot, shoot it to the opposite side corner where your person can get it, stuff like that. But, I try to be that person. I try to be, if a person in my own end defensively has the ball and there's like 2 people on them, I kind of hover close, not super, super close, right? Unless I see like an opportunity to take it and run with it. But I'm kind of there. I'm an option, so that if they need to get the ball away from the 2 people chasing them, they can shoot it to me and they're not going all that far. It's an easy pass to make. That's kind of also another part of this, right, is like be an option. I see a lot of people that are always directly next to an opponent, and yeah, they hover, they're constantly watching you, but to kind of try to break free and to be in these zones where you're able to receive the pass, right? I also hate it as a goalkeeper when people call for the ball and there's two people on them. It's like, well, I'm not giving it to you because there's no way you can actually receive it, right? Again, the chances of that working are just not all that high. So, as the player or as just the other person that doesn't have the ball, you kind of have to be in a good spot, right, to receive it. So that's something, and I think, by the way, all 5 of these things, I think people are getting better at. I think the team dynamic and like where players are supposed to be, who they're supposed to cover, waiting for those breakout passes, I think people naturally are like just kind of cluing into it and are just getting better at it, but there's still some room for improvement. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.